And for more on the Leveson report and reaction to it, we are joined by Porter Bibb, who was the first publisher of Rolling Stone magazine, who is now a senior investment banker at Mediatech Capital Partners that specializes in media companies. Thanks for joining us, Porter.
It's great to be here.
Okay, so does the hacking scandal at News of the World indicate to us that the British tabloids are not capable of regulating themselves?
Well, that's really the upshot of both the Leveson report and the investigation that went on, as you pointed out, for over a year, and the two other major inquiries, the parliamentary inquiry and the Scotland Yard inquiry. That the newspaper business has been out of control for decades in London, and the aggressiveness of Fleet Street was taken as a matter of course until the phone hacking scandal exploded.
So is this really, though, about bad journalistic ethics, or is it about a lack of law enforcement? Because what they did was break the law.
Well, clearly they broke the law. That's why two senior executives from News of the World are under indictment and are going back to court next Tuesday. They broke the law, but it was also lack of regulation. The newspaper industry in the UK has historically been, quote, self-regulated, and they didn't pay much attention to the ethical side of phone hacking.
Right, and is that just because they were too involved in the whole process and they couldn't objectively look at themselves and regulate themselves properly?
Well, it's very hard for anybody outside of the UK to understand how competitive newspapers are in that country. They have a dozen newspapers that are fiercely competitive, knocking each other right and left and doing everything they can to grab the next scandalous headline that's going to sell a few more copies of their paper. Most countries have maybe a half a dozen national papers and very few competitive markets on a local basis. In the UK, it's a ferociously competitive market, and that's what engenders all of this scandalous activity.
And the recommendation is that they create an independent regulatory body to replace the existing watchdog, which is the Press Complaints Commission, or the PCC.
Right.
But advocates of freedom of the press say that this is the wrong path to go on. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's not a question whether I agree or not. It's what is going to actually be implemented in the UK, and the three political parties, the Conservatives, Labour, and the Liberal Democrats, all have different views and different recommendations on how some kind of statutory regulation should be imposed on the newspaper industry. More than likely, a government-funded but not government-controlled body will end up overseeing and policing the newspaper business. But I suspect after all of the dust settles, there've been enough exposure of bad behavior and complicity on the part of both the police and other people in the Royal Palace and in the military that have colluded with the newspaper editors to create these scandalous insights and headlines. I doubt if that's going to be something that's going to happen continually going forward. So self-regulation failed. A little bit of statutory regulation is probably going to police sufficiently.
And what do you think has been the total cost, really? I don't know if we can quantify that to News Corp, because of course they're the ones that were involved.
Well, they're in the hundreds of millions of dollars right now. The biggest blow to them financially, well, there were two. One, the stock market capitalization of the company plummeted after the hacking scandal broke. They've regained most of that. They're up about 48% over their share price 52 weeks ago. But the big loss was the fact that Rupert Murdoch was intent on taking control in buying all of Bibb, the largest satellite broadcaster in the UK and one of the largest in the world. They own, News Corp owns 39%. The UK government said, because of your let's say questionable behavior, we're not going to let you go ahead and buy the rest of Bibb, and that was a multi-billion-dollar loss.
And very quickly, lastly, you know, this is really all about the newspapers, but we're in a much different media climate now. It's all about mobile, digital. So, what do we have to do about that domain? I mean, that's not regulated.
Too little, too late. The regulation of print in the UK or anywhere else is like trying to regulate a dinosaur. The electronic and digital media are completely unregulated worldwide, and that's a big issue that governments are going to have to deal with.
We're going to have to look at that. Thank you so much for joining us. Our thanks to Porter Bibb of Mediatech Capital. And let's now head back to Phil in